There seems no end in sight to the bus driver strike, which has entered a third week. Comes after negotiations hit a dead end again. Employers have now given unions an ultimatum to accept the offer on the table or face getting a lesser amount, which was offered earlier. Bus drivers have been offered a 9% wage increase from May this year up until March next year. An 8% hike would then take effect from April next year up until March 2020. Unions, however, are unwilling to accept the latest offer from employers.
Well, my issue is that since last week, we've been having bus problems, and now the issue is that we've already filled up our bus tax to a monthly, and it costs like $1,000. So imagine, on top of the $1,000, we already have budgets, and on the 500 rand for a week when you use taxis, and when you get inside the taxis, they say for maslalisan. Even if you pay 16 rand, you have to sit inside a taxi. And no, it's not okay. The strike must fall because our bus tag is full, but then the trips, when they expire, you don't get a refund, and it's an issue a whole lot because now you say it's month end. We have to budget 2,000 rand for taxis, and nearly reasonable when we're budgeting for taxi fare, for bus fare. So it's not on really. The strike must fall. We get the issue, 12% increase, but we also turning work, and where we work when we late, it's 500 attendance bonus gone. So we can't deal. The strike has to fall.
Ekseni mase ibhaka sokugibela itaxi to-Randburg sihlola amalayini made and ngapha itaxi yakhosta while nokuthi ibhasi masibagcwalisisa ibhasi tag maybe for a month uyakwazi ukugibela for a month itaxi yakhosta like iyakhosta itaxi ngapha abantu bama-taxi bayasithuka basitsho ukuthi nisuke emabhasini nize la ema-taxini ethu nizomosha ama-taxi. So lento le yas-affecta according to amabhasi, like indaba yamabhasi like isiphethe kabi serious because estrikini so sesigcwalise nama-tag and ama-tag ethu azoza expire. So lento le iyascost empilweni.
Staying with that story, we're joined by SATAWU media officer Zanele Sabela, who joins us in studio. Good evening to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. You've heard what commuters are saying on the streets. They're really just venting out their frustrations. What do you have to say to them?
We have apologized and apologized time and time again. Our hearts go out to them. We understand. You see, the struggles that the bus workers are constantly fighting are the same sort of struggles, because instead of bus fare, they have to contend with the fact that they have to send their children to school and they don't have the money. Someone else was speaking yesterday, a bus driver was speaking, and he was saying that, the debit orders come and after they're gone, I have nothing to feed my kids with. So these are the problems. These bus drivers work very long hours. They work a 14-hour to a 17-hour kind of day, and they earn very little. Minimum wages for a driver is 6,900, and the minimum wage in the sector is about 6,070. So when you look at that and the fact that they have absolutely no benefits, there's no medical aid, there's no pension fund, provident fund, nothing, then you must realize that that 6,900 that I speak of is all that a bus driver has.
Now, the strike is entering its third week. You have attempted to broker some sort of deal. I mean, last week you met with the Labour Minister as well as the Transport Minister to try reach some sort of solution here. At this point in time, where do the talks stand?
Okay, so the problem was last week, after the ministers left, they left us in the capable hands of the CCMA. But while Labour was caucusing, we had word from the employers that they said that if we don't accept the offer currently on the table, then they would revoke it and return back to an offer that they had made earlier, which was lower. This was obviously a problem at that very critical point in negotiations, and this is what led to the talks breaking down last week. However, this morning, as unions, just the 5 unions, we met and we decided that we can't have the stalemate stay because, like you said, it affects commuters. But then it also affects the bus drivers because while they are on strike, they're not getting paid. So what we've decided to do is to write to the Secretary of the Bargaining Council and ask him to convene another meeting with employers so that we can sit down again and resume these negotiations.
Now, the companies themselves have now set a Wednesday deadline saying that drivers must accept a deal. What do you make of that deadline being set?
Well, it was an ultimatum, and it equates to negotiating in bad faith. But I'm happy to note that I've seen the representatives of the employers on other stations, and what he has said is that they were not giving us an ultimatum. What they were actually saying is they would like to meet us maybe on Thursday. So given that we also would like to meet, and the fact that they've expressed a willingness to meet, so we'll probably have a meeting within this week to try and go back to the table again and see how far we go.
And in terms of the actual numbers at this point, I mean, what are you willing to accept?
Okay, so what the mandate we were given by our workers when we started this whole thing is they want a 12% increase. So we have compromised and we've come down to 9.5%. And then 8.5% for the second year. Employers have come to us with a 9% for the first year, but that only includes an increase for 11 months because they want to start paying it by the 1st of May and not by the 1st of April, not backdated to the 1st of April as they should. And then in the second year, they want to pay us 8%. So that's what we're haggling with. But then the problem also is the working conditions. We have spoken over and over again about the working conditions, the dual driver where you have two drivers on a long haul trip. One is driving, the other waits to take over when the one is tired. They say the one who's waiting to take over to drive is not working. Meantime, while he's in the bus, he can't be anywhere else. He has to be in the bus. He is working because he's on duty and he's helping load the luggage, but then he's also checking tickets and making sure that everything runs smoothly. So effectively, he's at work. And for that, for being on that bus, they're paying him 400 rands allowance for the month, which is obviously not enough. And that 400 is something that we fought for very hard last year. Before then, there was nothing. So we want that gone, and we want these people to be paid for every hour that they're at work.
And what are companies saying about those working conditions?
They are they just like resistant. They don't want to address those. They also don't want to address the issue that night shift in this industry is a peculiar one because it doesn't align to the basic conditions of employment, which says 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. In this industry, your night shift is work done between 8 p.m. and 3 a.m. And that is because typically a bus driver will pick up a bus from the bus depot at about 3 a.m. and then go collect commuters and drop it off back there at 8 p.m. So they're shorting basically the workers on their overtime. And this is the problem. They also don't want us to insource some of the workers like cleaners into the bargaining council so that we can negotiate for them when you negotiate for the whole industry. So these are the problems. Employers haven't wanted to address these, and we came into these negotiations with these and more. There were others like the subsistence allowance that drivers are given. When they go on long haul trips, they often have to sleep over because, it's a very tiring trip. So they only give them $5.95. They're willing to give them $5.95 this year. And that $5.95, where have you ever seen where you can sleep comfortably and rest so you can drive the next day for $5.95? It's unreasonable. And lately, employers have said that we have been getting over, more than inflation-related increases in the last while. But if that's true, how come it's not reflected, not just in the pay, but also in the allowances that they're giving?
I want to bring in Ishmael Mnisi, the Department of Transport spokesperson, into this conversation. Mr. Mnisi, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. The bus driver strike is now entering its third week. What is your standing as the Transport Ministry?
Well, the Minister of Transport has raised a concern when the bus strike was almost a week old, with its own consequences to the commuters, the employers and the employees themselves, that if it gets prolonged, there is a loss for all the stakeholders involved. And this is the reason why the minister accepted a request by the Minister of Labour to join in a meeting to meet the labour and the employers. Indeed, we did that with a view to persuade both the parties to come very close. After the presentation by both the involved parties in the negotiations, Minister Nzimande's view was that they are not far off from reaching an agreement. What he could not subject himself and together with the Minister of Labour is for them to pronounce on the conditions for the agreement. Here, they both left the involved parties in the negotiations through the facilitation of the CMA to conclude on the nitty-gritties. And to our surprise, up until today, the two involved parties have not concluded an agreement, and the resumption of the bus operations have not commenced, and that is a very serious concern to the Minister of Transport.
And what is the Minister planning to do about that at this point in time?
Well, the Minister said that he would check as to how far did these negotiations go, because it was at the time when he left the negotiations, it seemed as if a resolution was going to be met that very same day. Now, we will get a detailed report on what exactly are still the outstanding issues to be resolved. However, he made an appeal that whilst the two parties are still finding each other in terms of the issues of consent from both parties, they must then agree on the resumption of the bus operations. Because as your guest has also indicated there, that both the parties are getting affected by the strike. Employers are losing revenue, and employees are also losing revenue because of they are not getting any salaries as a result of the strike. And of course, the commuters themselves are getting affected because those that rely on bus services as their mode of transport daily to work, who bought tickets and so on, they are getting affected. And those who even prefer to use long-distance buses to various destinations, this long weekend were affected severely.
Let me go back to Ms. Zabela. You were really confident that you started off with the Labour Minister, and then the Transport Minister was also invited into these talks. You were confident that some sort of solution would have been found by now. As Ntate Mnisi is speaking right now, what's resonating with you?
What actually is in my mind right now is the fact that Minister is the one that pays the subsidies, and they've recently changed the system. They used to pay them per passenger that they transport, but now they're paying them per kilometer that they travel. So considering in this month that there hasn't been much travel, could we perhaps say to the Minister, we're looking at a zero, like 0 kilometers? Can we perhaps look at a zero subsidy for this month and see if that maybe will motivate the bus companies to come to the table, because they get those subsidies. And previously they've told us that they haven't received increases for these subsidies for the last while, they said to us. But then we found out that no, that's not actually true. For this year, they received 3.8% increase. The year before it was more than 6%, and the year before that was more than 11%. So they have been receiving this, and over and above that, they've also increased bus fares by 7%, on average 7%. So they're getting a subsidy which they're supposed to use to help the commuters, which they're now leaving stranded, and then they also increasing bus fares, which says their revenue is going up. Where is the money? Can we put pressure on them to make sure that they pay the bus drivers so we can go back to work?
Mr. Mnisi, is a zero subsidy a possibility?
Subsidy, let me just clarify. Subsidies are paid to subsidize the riders, the passengers. They are not paid for the comfort of the owners of the companies, and that must be very clear. The Minister, the issue regarding the review of the subsidies when there's a protest, or a labor dispute was raised in our presence, in the minister's presence last week, and the minister said that firstly is not the issue at hand at the moment, but secondly, that now that the issue was raised, government will look into that without any concluding remarks from the minister, because we did not go there for subsidy negotiations. But we must also indicate that the issues affecting subsidies across all modes of transport are an ongoing process of conversation. As we know that the bus industry has been receiving subsidies from government since 1994, and we have other modes of transport who have received less subsidies and which are mostly used by the community in public, which are the taxis, of which through the taxi recapitalization program, we are also looking at how can we better utilize and assist them to manage those businesses. And also whether the bracket in terms of what is currently being given to the bus industry, is it enough or not, and so on, should not be a yardstick to look at issues of salaries and working conditions of the laborers, because the issues that were at hand, they were not only affecting issues of salaries, but they are issues affecting their working conditions. So the negotiators needed to have a broader strategy of engagement on both the issues, so that it must not only be monetary discussions alone, but also it needed to deal with other substantive issues that we have spoken about just now.
Is that a response to your satisfaction?
Well, ultimately, the responsibility is with us as the representatives of the workers in the sector and the employers who employ these workers. So the ball basically is in our court. We've tried to ask for assistance. It hasn't helped much. So yeah, we'll have to pick up the ball and run with it.
And in terms of a way forward, I mean, we're entering week 3, and the long weekend is passing, and we'll be back again at the taxi ranks with the enormous queues and traffic delays. When do you foresee an end to the strike?
That's a very difficult one, and I have been asked this from the very first day of the strike. So what we are doing is, what we have already done is sent out that letter to the General Secretary of the Bargaining Council to say we would like to meet this week. And as I have indicated, I've also heard that the employers are also willing to meet this week. So as far as that's concerned, let's just hope that when we get around the table, something has shifted, something has moved, and we can actually engage. But as far as I can see, we have made serious concessions. We have come down from 12%. We have given up the subsistence allowance that I was talking about. We have given that up. We are not talking about it. We're saying, if they increase it by whatever percentage we agree on, that will be fine for now. So there are concessions that we've made, and we do think it's time the employers also make some concessions and come to the table.
So does the bus driver strike continue tomorrow?
Unfortunately, the bus driver strike continues tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Let's wrap up with Mr. Mnisi, who's on the line. Mr. Mnisi, what do you foresee here as the outcome in terms of this strike that has really left thousands of commuters scrambling for alternative means of transport?
What we are yearning for as the government is that there should be immediate resumption of the talks and the immediate resumption of the operations because the majority of people in South Africa who rely on these services have been affected. The ones that the subsidy we are talking about now is meant for, and we would remain available to engage with both parties. However, we are confident that through the CCMA, we will be able to reach an amicable solution, and also that we will be able to pick up the conversation with both labor and employers even post this strike, because you know, from the engagements we've had with them, our view is that there are issues that we need to talk about going forward to avoid such instances.
And this is where we leave it. My guest, Department of Transport spokesperson Ishmael Mnisi there, as well as SATAWU spokesperson Zanele Sabela. Thank you and a very good evening to you. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the weather.